Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 507. Our top 5 area majority and area influence games.
Welcome, citizens, to Meeple Nation. Grab your favorite beverage, pull up a chair, warm up those dice, and join us at the game table as we discuss board games and the board gaming world. Each week, the hosts of Meeple Nation share their love for board games and the amazing memories that come from playing games with some very outstanding people. Let us now join our hosts in their natural habitat, the game table.
Meeple Nation Podcast is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com. We love their product. We love our toppers. We love our game nights because of our game toppers. We play on them as often as we can, almost daily. If you too want to share in the excitement, wander on over to GameToppersLLC.com and pick out a topper that is right for you in your house. That's GameToppersLLC.com.
They have those new young Sherlock toppers that are for kid games, and they're more like a coffee table style topper now, and that's kind of exciting. We saw some of those at BGG. He had one on display, and they actually look really cool.
Yeah, he tags them as like a puzzle table. I think the idea of it's great.
Welcome to Meeple Nation. We are your hosts. I am Andy Holliday.
And I'm Nathan Howard.
Meander over to our website.
I love the word meander, by the way.
Oh, awesome.
Well done.
Thank you. And check out what we have to offer you. We have links to all of our episodes, all the way back to episode 1.
All the way back.
All the way back.
Almost 10 years now.
That is incredible. So if you have a lot of time on your hands or are going to be driving great distances, then we have got a podcast for you to listen to.
You know, it's funny. Salvatore, sorry to interrupt. Salvatore said he was going backwards listening to him. And I warned him, you're going to experience this get progressively worse. But I wonder how he's doing, if he gave up on that or if he's still making that effort. We'll have to ask him.
Yeah, that would be a good question to ask. If it's like, okay, yeah, I can't do this anymore. Sorry, I'm out. But they are there if you are interested. We also have blogs and photos of our gaming experiences, bios. We love what we do. And if you want to help us improve the podcast, we have a link to our Patreon page. We thank you so much for those of you that are patrons. We appreciate the support that you give us and the opportunity that you are giving us to improve the podcast and make extra content for you and for all of the listeners. We very much appreciate what you do for us on a monthly basis. If you would like to become a patron, click that link, become a member of the nation. We would love to have you.
We love our patrons.
And if you have any questions or comments, we've mentioned Salvatore already in this episode. He's a weekly communicator with us, and we love his correspondence and his questions. If you have any questions or thoughts, you can email us at meeplenation@gmail.com.
All right, let's talk about some of our highlights. A couple weeks back, you and your family were at BGG Con. I was here. Doug got sick. James was in Japan. Everybody was everywhere, but my sad, lonely self here. Greg came over, and so we got the opportunity to play some 2-player games. He wanted to start off with Star Wars, the deck building game. He very much loves this game. It's one that I taught him, and he went and picked up, which is kind of a habit of Greg.
Yes, it is.
That anytime we teach him a game, he's like, I gotta get that game. Star Wars deck building, we played twice, and we both won one, but we didn't play a tiebreaker. But then I also got the opportunity to teach him Fika, the clever coffee break game. And a while back I tried to teach this game to my wife, and it fell flat with her. She was like, nope, we're not playing this. I'm done. I don't like this game at all. So I got the opportunity to get Greg, and I warned him, my wife really didn't like this game, but I want to give it another shot. I want to get somebody else's opinion.
Hey, by the way, my wife hated this game. Let's play it.
Yeah, let's give this a try. Fika, there's 3 suits of cards, 1 through 6. Players sit on opposite sides of the board, a street in the middle of both coffee shops, and you're trying to sell drinks and treats that are going to attract customers. The cards are all going to score dependent on if you can get cards of the same suit next to each other, cards of the same suit on your side of the street. Some cards you want to get a 1 on the far left and a 6 on the far right. Variety of ways, but if you achieve those goals, then you get to score those points that are on the cards. And then if you attract a group to the street, groups are going to give one player, they're going to triple their score and double the other player's score. So they're going to give your opponent something, but hopefully if it's going to triple your score, it's going to be more beneficial for you. Fairly clever game. And what I think kind of deflated my wife's is it's kind of a brain burner as you're trying to manipulate where you're going to put these cards, how you're going to execute. Each turn, each player is going to play a card. Whoever played the highest number card is going to place their card first. Then your opponent is going to place their card. There's some cards that will allow you to manipulate offerings that are on both sides of the street, reorder or cause chaos to the other side of the street, or maybe help fix some of the chaos that's on your side of the street. For an 18-card deck, there is really a lot going on in this game. And I honestly think I would really like to get, Andy, your thoughts on it, and Doug. As soon as I was talking about it and saying how Cheryl hated it, Doug went on BGG and was like, oh yeah, it's got a ton of bad reviews. And I don't think those are all merited. The game has some meat. It's not going to be a big beefy meal. It's going to be a bite-sized game that is done pretty good. We get through it. We completed the whole game, which was more than my wife did.
How long did it take?
With explanation and all that, I think it only took like 40 minutes.
Oh, well, that's not bad at all.
Yeah. I mean, once the game's played, if you're going to sit down and play it, it's a 20-minute game. Greg was like, there's been 2 games that I've come here and I've played, and I'm like, I don't get that game. And I can't even remember what the first one was. But he was like, yeah, I don't get that game. He's like, it was fun, it was interesting, but yeah, I don't get it. I would need to play it a couple more times. And so it does have a steep learning curve. But I found that the second time I played it, I found it far more enjoyable than the first time.
This is sounding a lot like Cooper Island to me.
You know, it is. This is my Cooper Island. After FICA, 2 of us, I got this great World War II game. Let's play Memoir 44. Switched up both sides, and he's like, I love this game. I found a copy, but I really want to try the 8-player variant, so I need to find a second copy.
Oh, geez.
So not only did Greg go and pick up Memoir 44, but he picked up a second copy of Memoir 44 so that he could try the epic.
Who's he going to play that with?
I don't know. It's going to be on a Friday night instead of game night, I think, or instead of RPG.
Maybe so.
Maybe not instead of just an appetizer to your RPG night.
Maybe so. But there's only 4 of us, so for his RPG night, so I don't know.
Maybe that's something that he'll try to do at SaltCon.
Oh, maybe so. That'd be fun.
He's wanting to run Wandering Towers at SaltCon, but he doesn't want to run it with my copy. He wants to run it with his own copy, so maybe he'll change that to Memoir 44 if he gets...
Did you just say farty far?
I did.
Wow.
I was hoping no one noticed.
That was impressive. All right. Well, you did mention that I was at BGG-Con a week or so ago. And, you know, it's funny that you just made the comparison of food and games. I had made a similar comparison at BGG-Con, and it kind of left my daughter scratching her head a little bit. I'm like, come on, follow the metaphor, girl. I was talking about Acropolis. And I said, this game is just refreshing to me. I play this game and it's like the palate cleanser of the board game world to me.
I like it.
It's like going to get wings and you eat a piece of celery to cleanse your palate so you can enjoy the next flavor. And that's what Acropolis is for me. That's not my highlight, but that's just what that reminded me of. But,
I like it.
Also at BGG, one of my favorite games we played was Imperial Miners. It's a really cool engine building game. Everyone starts out with tile that has 3 abilities on it, the ground level of your mine, and then you build underneath of it. And there are level 1 mine cards, level 2 mine cards, level 3 mine cards, and level 4 mine cards. You can take from any of the stacks but the level 4s. You'll have a hand of cards. On your turn, you get to play a card. When you play the card, you get to activate the ability of that card and everything above it. So you can get things to synergize off of each other really, really well. However, you can build as many cards in your level 1 mine shaft as you want, but to build a level 2, you have to have 2 level 1 mine cards above it. And to build a level 3, you have to have 2 level 2 mine cards above that. So you're basically building this reverse pyramid of mine shafts. It is a ton of fun to try to get everything to work out. You have a bunch of different factions that kind of have strengths in different areas. Sometimes it benefits you to diversify your factions. Sometimes it benefits you to to really focus on one particular faction and try to gain as many benefits from that faction as possible. Certain cards will give you bonuses. So for example, if you're the barbarians are a little more reckless. They're going to cause collapses in their mine shafts, but it will, when you play a card, it may give you bonuses for how many collapsed mine shafts you have. Tracks that you're moving up, and those are going to give you bonuses as you move up those tracks. And the Japanese faction is the best at moving up those tracks. It's really where you score a huge number of your points is going up the 3 different tracks. The engine building aspect for me was firing on all cylinders. It was so much fun. One of the games that I came back the second on my list of games I had to have on my shelf.
So I'm just looking at some pictures of this. And did you play, like, was it the deluxe version, the Kickstarter version?
I don't think so.
Oh, because there's some...
Does the Kickstarter version have the little mine carts that are actually the 3D mine carts?
Yeah.
Okay, then it was the...
Well, I don't know if it's a Kickstarter version or not, but I'm just assuming that that's not the base level, but maybe it is. If it is, and the little treasure chests,
yeah,
that it looks awesome.
It was so much fun. And you have an event card that comes out at the beginning of every round, and it'll either be something immediate, something that happens during the mining phase, or something that happens at the end of the phase. And the events are actually kind of fun and enjoyable to work through. They're not like, oh man, this is going to be terrible. I have to work around this terrible event that's happening. A lot of them actually can be good events. Very enjoyable game. The game ends when the event card deck runs out. So it's just a set number of rounds. You play until the events are run out, and then the game's over. You count up your points, and whoever has the most points wins.
Yeah, it's got to be a deluxe version, because here's another version that has the 3D carts that has just a picture of the gold on it.
Oh, yep. Then we did play with the deluxe version. And
yeah, so I don't know if it's a Kickstarter or a deluxe version, but it just says language versions. I don't see a deluxe version. But it looks awesome. I can very much see why you were so excited about it.
Yeah, it was fun.
And with a quick play time, under an hour.
Yeah, and it was. Turns were fast. It was not complicated, and the play's simultaneous. So
even better.
You do your event, and then everybody does their mine card. You resolve everything going up your mine shafts because you resolve everything above it. And obviously, you're going to have 2 cards that you have to choose from as you're moving up. You pick which one you want to resolve. Once everybody's finished, you move up your track, get your stuff, and then it's the end of the round, you go to the next round. So it really does play quickly. And that, as you're teaching the game, yeah, we're going through that entire event deck, and it's not a huge deck of cards, but it's a good sized deck of cards. And
yeah,
it seems, this is going to be a long game. Oh, not so. The rounds go very quickly.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love it when a game comes together like that. I love it when a plan comes together.
Yeah, it's a great game.
Yeah. Those were some great highlights. Let's talk about the meat of the matter. Our top 5. There's only 2 of us.
Yeah.
Doug is out tonight, so it's just the 2 of us. So our top 10 games.
Yay.
Again, we're talking about our top 5 area majority and area influence games. Do you want to start us off, Andy?
I sure do. Now, last week, first game I talked about actually was game that kind of had the conflict, like the Risk style conflict to it. And that game was Small World. The aspects of that game that I liked are going to be similar to number 5 on my list, and that is History of the World. Thinking about it, it kind of surprises me that History of the World beat out Small World, because Small World is more of a fantasy theme, whereas History of the World is a history theme. But I do love history. But I really enjoy History of the World. You play through several different epochs, and it's going to be similar to Small World, where you hit another epoch, whatever civilization you were, it then now becomes inactive. Those pieces stay on the board, and you'll still score points for them as long as they are there. But you start a whole new civilization. It tells you where to place all of your units for that new start of the civilization, and you're starting almost like a fresh new game, but you can still score points for anything previously that you played. Not to mention that you can have minor civilization cards. This epoch, I get to play 2 civilizations because I have a minor one that I get to try to conquer some territory with. And you just go around and you're going to conquer territory and score points at the end of your turn. And then the next player's turn happens, and if you conquered some of the territory that is part of their civilization, all of your guys get taken off, and their guys get put on, and when they start up their civilization, and then they get to take their turn. So it's far less, I guess, painful to lose units in the heat of the battle versus something like Risk that has a little more take that. I guess it does have a take that to it, but it doesn't have that take that doesn't sting quite as much as in History of the World as it does in a lot of those other take that area control and majority control games. Honestly, I've played it many, many times, and I've never felt like, oh man, really? You're totally hosing me over, because it doesn't matter. Because, yeah, it's going to maybe make me score fewer points next turn, but the next epoch comes out. For all I know, I may be taking my own units off to put my new ones on. Depends on which civilization you draw out for the next epoch. It's so well done as far as that mechanic, that area control mechanic, especially with one that has the take that element to it, to be implemented that well to it doesn't have that sting and that hurt feeling typically comes with that.
Take that. Yeah.
That's not there in History of the World, and I really like that aspect, and that's why it hit my number 5.
As you were talking, it was reminding me of another game that I recently picked up last year, and for the life of me, I can't think of the name. One that's on the shelf of shame. Kind of a similar through history and...
Through the Ages?
No, that's not it. It's a fairly new game. But anyways, similar along the lines, but without the time commitment.
Yeah.
I'll think of it when we're done, and then I'll be mad.
I will say this. One of my plays of this game, I've never seen full-grown adults move so quickly because a glass of water got spilled while we were playing this on the table. All of a sudden, a towel appeared out of nowhere.
It just...
and people were pulling pieces off. It was actually kind of incredible to watch that. I didn't realize everybody could move that quickly.
It's funny what it takes to get people moving.
Yeah, it still gets talked about. It's like, oh yeah, that game, the History of the World. Yeah, I remember when we spilled water on that.
Yeah, it reminds me of your cousin Max. We were playing a card game, and he spilled a root beer, and his cards were all sleeved.
Oh no!
And when that root beer touched those cards, it just
sucked it right up.
Yep.
Oh man,
ruined his cards. I felt so bad for him. But yeah, because he wasn't fast enough, and there wasn't a towel that appeared magically for that one. But my number five is a game that my daughter loves, a game that her and I have played quite a bit, and it actually has a little bit of that take that element into it, but not to an extent that it breaks the game. This is Tyrants of the Underdark. Very much a deck building game with area control in it, based in Dungeons & Dragons. Players are leaders of House of Drow, just below the Sword Coast, and your house is your deck of cards. To set up the game, there are four factions. There's Drow, Dragons, Demons, and Elementals. And so you're going to pick 2 of those stacks, shuffle them together, and that's what's going to form your deck for the game. And so it does have a little bit of replayability, not a ton, but there's just a 4, but it does provide some replayability for the game. Put one of your troops on the board, and then you're going to begin the game. Starting deck, just like any deck builder game. Then there's the market there that you're going to buy stuff from. Cards are either going to provide you power or they're going to provide you influence. Power, if you have 3 power, you can assassinate somebody else's troop on the board. If you have 1 power, you can deploy a troop adjacent to where you have control, or then you can spend your recruit to buy stuff. Very much deck builder feel there. But there are certain elements, I believe there's 5 sections on the board that you're trying to maintain control of. And if you maintain control, then each round that those are going to give you victory points. They're going to add to your score. As you control the board, your opponent's going to try to fill up that, and then you're going to try to come in. You're going to try to eliminate their troops, assassinate their troops, and replace them with yours in order to gain influence. And it is very much take that element. I feel it's pretty minute, and the game's pretty short, that it's not painful.
It's a little easier to have that take that element when it's a 2-player game, when you're only playing 2 players anyway.
Well, it is a 4-player game, so it goes...
I mean, I'm just talking about you and your daughter playing, right? So playing games like that, if it's only 2 players...
You're absolutely right.
Then that's just the game, right? Someone's not getting ganged up on, I think, is why that's probably the biggest reason why I don't care for the mechanic when it's implemented in a way that can be, this person's winning, everybody attack them.
Yeah, no,
right?
I see that for sure. The game ends when somebody runs out of troops, or if the market stack is depleted, then you just tally the score. Very simple game, re-released. If you can find the older version, I strongly recommend getting the older version. It has those little plastic miniatures that are nice. The newer version is just cardboard pieces. Still works, right? Nothing bad about that. The little miniatures in it kind of elevate it a little bit.
If I'm not mistaken, this is based on R.A. Salvatore's novels.
I believe so, yeah.
And those are my favorite Forgotten Realms books. His books are amazing. So I looked at this game for years and years, and the only reason why I never bought it was because it was area control.
We should give it a shot. I think you would like it.
We should. And I love the theme because, like I said, R.A. Salvatore is one of my favorite authors. And as far as Dungeons & Dragons and Forgotten Realms books, he is my favorite author. and his books are amazing.
Hey.
Little plug there for R.A. Salvatore.
There you go.
All
So
right.
that's my number 5.
Awesome pick. I love the theme. I would be interested in trying that, especially a 2-player version of that. I would very much enjoy giving that a shot. All right, my number 4. Terra Mystica is my number 4.
That's a good game.
And it is a great game. There's the Gaia Project, which is the space version. I like Terra Mystica a little bit better, but that's probably because it's a more of a fantasy theme.
And I like Gaia Project.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more of a sci-fi thing.
Yeah, which makes sense. Aspects I like about this is the asymmetry of the game. Every player's playing a different game. Not to mention that as far as the terrain goes, every player, because they are an asymmetrical race of peoples, they are trying to terraform the world to best fit what they like, where they like to live. Therefore, for you to build any buildings on any of the spaces on the board, that terrain must match your favored terrain. So you're going to be going throughout the game trying to change the terrain in order to build, whereas your neighbors are going to be trying to do the same thing. They're trying to change the different terrains around you in order to build as well. Now you would think, okay, well, let's just separate ourselves and just, I'll have my little area of the board and you have yours and you have yours.
We don't get along here.
Yeah, well, that way I can terraform all of this and have my big, huge kingdom and you can do the same and whatever. But there's a really cool mechanic in this game that kind of incentivizes you to build close to each other. Actually, 2 mechanics. There's one for your trading houses. If you are building a trading house next to somebody else, then your trading house is cheaper. If it's adjacent to somebody else's building, it doesn't matter what their building is.
That makes sense. It is a trading house.
Exactly. Thematically, it works. But also, whenever anybody builds next to you, they have a cool magic mechanic. You have the 3 bowls where you're moving your mana around. And whenever anybody builds next to you, depending on the size of building they build, you get to move your mana. That many of your mana tokens get to move. And then you can spend that during your turn to perform the static abilities that are on the board, on top of any other abilities that you may have with your race or with the bonus card or bonus tile that you took at the beginning of the round. There are plenty of ways to spend that magic during the game. It is an integral part. That management can make or break your game. A lot of that comes into where you're building in that area controlled. Are you building next to people even though you're going to be fighting for control of that land because they want different land than you, and you're going to be fighting on who's changing what to what ultimately. And then you have goals, end of round goals every single round that are going to be based on a ton of different things. At the end of the game, all about how many spaces you control, having cities and having large cities so that you can score max points. It's a great game. I love this game. I love games that have asymmetrical powers in them.
Yes, you do.
And this one is done so well as far as that goes. No 2 players are trying to create the same terrain type. So you're always fighting with the other players of, oh yeah, that one, I'm lava, so the Badlands or whatever, I need to build on lava, so the Badlands are the closest to me, but they're also, it only cost me 1 shovel to move to Badlands, whereas the person who likes forests, they're fighting for completely different things. They're trying to move to things that are going to be cheaper for them to terraform for, or terraform the lands so that matches their terrain type. Great game. It does not hit the table near enough. They have 2 expansions out for it. Both the expansions add races and add new content that's really fun. It's a game I would recommend to anybody.
It's a pretty beefy game, too.
It really is.
A weight of 4.97.
Does it really?
It does. And oddly enough, Gaia Project has a rating of 4.4, so even heavier. And I didn't feel like it was heavier when we played them.
It is a little bit heavier. Gaia Project is. It has a few more things that are not in Terra Mystica.
Okay.
And there is a lighter version out as well.
Terra Nova.
Yeah,
I was going to get to that. And that one's a 2.88. Played this at BGG Con last year.
Yeah.
And it's a great, simple implementation of this game. So if Terra Mystica scares you away, Terra Nova is a great baby steps into that if you need to work your way up. Terra Mystica is a great game. So that's an awesome number 4. So last week we talked about, I can't remember what the name of the game was that you talked about. Scholars of the South Tigris?
Scholars of the South Tigris, yeah.
Scholars of the South Tigris. And a lot of those elements, if I remember correctly, I said reminded me of a game that was in my top 5.
Right.
This game is a classic game, came out in the year 2000, and this is Carlos Magnus. I think I actually tried to get you and Doug to play this game, and it kind of fell flat with both of you guys. Very bland. In the center of the table, there's going to be 15 territories, and players are going to use wooden markers. They're going to gain influence and use those as influence. These cubes come in 5 different colors, and so that is what is going to use to weigh and measure your influence. If you have control of the influence, then you're going to get the influence marker. Any of those cubes that are on any of the territories are now under your influence. This is very much an area control. Start the game with 6 random influence. On your turn, you're going to be able to place 3 cubes. You can place them onto your own personal influence to try to maintain or take away influence from somebody else, or you can sprinkle them out onto the territories in order to gain influence on the specific territories. Then kind of a unique mechanic is everybody has 5 discs. They're labeled 1 through 5, and you're going to play one in secret, reveal them. The highest number is going to go first. Also, there's an Emperor token that travels and visits all 15 of these territories. Whatever that number is the maximum space, the maximum territories that you can move the Emperor. And wherever the Emperor ends its turn is where influence can happen, right? If I land the Emperor in my territory and I have the most influence there, then I can place one of my 10 player tokens saying that this is my territory. Now, on a later turn, Andy, if you want to try to come and take over that, you either have to take away my influence, also come in with enough influence of either that color that you took over, or bring in a whole new color to try to manage and usurp my influence in that region. If I can gain majority in 2 adjacent regions, well, then I'm going to snap those 2 pieces together. And so now there's less territories, then there is more influence within those territories. I mean, when you were talking about the Scholars of the South Tigris, a lot of these mechanics were coming into my mind very similar to that. The game, I think, is very good. It is a classic game. It is pretty basic in its appeal. Table presence is nothing exciting. It is re-implemented by Erantis, which I haven't checked out. I should probably give that a shot so I can say if it helped. But Carlos Magnus, classic game that is super high on my list, and apparently number 4 on my area majority, area influence games.
Something very much in common with a lot of those games around that era, and that's let's just say the gaming industry has come a long way as far as their table presence.
Has.
Because they were all really blah back then. All right, my number 3 is Kingdom Builder, a game that I have owned for almost pretty much since it came out and haven't played in years, and we got it to the table at BGG.
Oh, did you?
We
Good
did.
Times.
I had forgotten how awesome this game is. And I do believe it won the Spiel des Jahres when it came out. There's a good reason for that. It really is a solid game. You're playing with 4 different map tiles that are random, and those tiles are going to have specific buildings that will do things. Now, in order to gain those tokens, you have to have built next to those particular building types. And there typically are going to be 2 areas that you can, 2 different spots that you can build next to and have up to 2 of those tokens that are going to give you bonus actions during your turn. Now, one thing that I think really increases the replayability of this bunch of expansions, which helps, you're introducing a ton of buildings and content and different abilities, but you have 3 mission cards that come out at the beginning of the game, and that's basically how you score points, are those 3 cards. It really dictates on how you're playing the game, how you're laying down your cubes to gain that influence. There are a bunch of cards, so that changes every game on how, whether you want to build next to mountains, are you going to build next to water? Are you only scoring what you have the least in, or are you scoring your biggest area? Tons of ways to score points, and it's always going to be those 3 cards. I really like that because it changes completely. The game we've played it twice at BGG, and the first game we played, we just did the base game. One of the buildings that you can gain the tokens for allowed you to place an influence marker on the perimeter of the board. Now, you had to place it adjacent to something, if possible, that you already had. But for the goals that were in the game, it was one of the most useless buildings that there were out there. There were other ones that were great, that were so powerful because of the scoring markers or the scoring cards that were out. Whereas if it would have been something else that was out there, they very well could have been the most important building you could have gotten. And I like that aspect of it because it just changes. It changes every time you play it. And there's no take that to it. I mean, yeah, you can cut someone off, which Amara did really well on the game we played with her.
For her.
The scoring card was that you needed to build around, be adjacent to cities and be adjacent to other locations where you actually get the tokens, because cities don't have tokens. They just score you points. But you just needed to be around adjacent to as many of them as possible. You got 1 point for every token you had adjacent to a city. And she was really good at surrounding cities and cutting off everybody's access to all the towns or all the cities that she was next to. She did that with a couple of spots. I'm like, dang it, kid.
Knock it off.
You're cramping my style here. But it's such a great game. And I had forgotten how good it was. And I'm really glad that we were able to get that to the table at BGG. And honestly, I think I may have to see if I can find some expansions for it, because I only have the base game. I gotta get some expansions because I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I stopped playing it because there were just so many other games that were coming out at the time, and the capital was being spent somewhere else. A rediscovery for me of a great game. Because of that, it hit my number 3.
It's a game that I had in cold, and you are correct. In 2012, it did win the Spiel des Jahres. Great game.
I did think it was 2012. I didn't want to say that because I thought I might be wrong, but awesome. Number 3.
Want everybody to make fun of you.
I didn't. I should have just said it, and then I would have sounded so smart.
Number 3, another game originated.
What?
It is another game. Oddly enough, it originated in the year 2000. Does have a re-implementation, 2021, but the original game is Web of Power. And I don't know, Andy, if you remember, we actually got the chance to play this at BGG Con last year. Been re-implemented into Awari. This is a classic game, in my opinion. Another classic game. Trying to maintain and gain control over the area. But if you play a card, you're able to place a tent within the matching region, or you can place an influence, a totem in the influence area. Or if you have 2 matching cards, then you can place 2 tents or 2 totems. Or if you don't have 2 matching cards, you're going to play 1 card and any 2 other cards, and they will count as a wild, allow you to place 2. Be cautious on when you're just throwing away cards, because once that stack depletes, and it will deplete pretty quick, we're halfway through the game. We're going to do what they call a tent scoring, and you're going to look at each region. For example, if I have 3 tents and Andy, you have 2 tents, well, then I'm going to score 5 points because I'm going to take the total of all the tents in the region. And then you, as second player, you're going to take however many tents I have as the majority player. And so that tent scoring goes at halfway through the game, and we're going to count all the regions, tally the score that way. When we go through the stack a second time, we're going to do that same score, except for the second time, we're going to go around the board, and I believe there's 14 regions that are neighboring regions. If you have the majority in both regions, you're going to score points equal to the number of totems in each region. You'll go through all those 14 regions, or those 14 connections. You'll do a final scoring called the settlement scoring. You'll assess the board, and you'll find anywhere where you have 4 tents, a minimum of 4 tents, and however long that chain is. And those 4 tents they have to be connected, contiguous tents. So I can't have anybody else's tent interrupt that chain. However long that chain is, I'm going to score that many points. Whoever has the most points wins. Web of Power or Awari, very good games. The re-implementation very much gives that a booster shot, makes the game far more appealing, not necessarily palatable, but more appealing to get to the table. Great game. I have both versions. Still prefer the classic Web of Power, but Awari is still a great game, and that's my number 3.
So why did you buy Awari?
It's a little bit different, and there's a BGA implementation of Awari. So if I could teach my wife how to play Awari, I could get her to play it online.
There you go.
But I haven't brought that one to the table to her because I'm not 100% sure how she's going to take that mechanic. So
yeah, I get that.
But a very good game, and it does give table presence, anyways, appeal. It does give it a booster shot.
It definitely needed that. It was once again one of those early 2000 games that just was kind of blah.
Yeah.
Very vanilla.
A lot of those games were.
They were, yep. Yeah, like I said, we've come a long way in as far as the way games look on the table. But that was fun. I think it was our first year at BGG that we played that. My first year.
It might have been 2 years ago, yeah.
So, but I do recall that I had a good time with it. I was pleasantly surprised with how fun it was. My number 2 is another Shem Phillips game, Viscounts of the West Kingdom. I love the West Kingdom series. As far as all of his games, the West Kingdoms are my favorite ones. And Viscounts is the third of that series, and it has a very unique area control mechanism. It's probably the most unique part of that game, in my opinion, and that's where you have the little castle in the central hub
right
of the board, and you're adding workers onto that to build the castle up, right? But it's the gameplay itself with the castle is really cool. Workers on there. If you have 3 or more workers, then if they're on the bottom ring, one of each moves over and one moves up to the next ring. And then you check
if
bottom
chain
rings.
Reacts, right.
And you just get to try to get your workers up to that center hub, that top part of the castle. But at the end of the game, you're going to score points based on all of your people. I just love the uniqueness of getting your workers into the right locations on that castle, and that's all done during the gameplay. And it is when you're moving those workers around, you're going to gain bonuses for them entering different spaces. So it's very strategic because the bonuses are different with each space that they can move into. Where you are adding workers can really depend on what you need at that point in time where you are in the game. It's like, okay, I need gold at this point, so I need to put my workers here, even though maybe long term it's more beneficial to put them on this side or in this particular location. For me to do what I need to do this round, I have to put them here so I can cause bigger chain reactions and get more stuff so I can accomplish what I need to do this round. I love that aspect of it. I love the uniqueness of it because I haven't seen anything else really like that.
I think you're right. I haven't seen anything like it.
Last week we talked about Shem Phillips, his games where they're all different, but they kind of feel the same. Similar, I think as far as the 3 in the West Kingdom series, this one is probably the most different than the Paladins or Architects, but I mean, it's going to have the same artwork, same iconography, and everything else. But it is just one of the many ways to score points in that game, but definitely the most unique way to score points.
I talked last week about not killer bunnies.
You almost did it.
I almost did it. Bunny kingdoms, just one kingdom. Bunny kingdom, that learning curve that is there.
Yeah.
If you don't really understand what's going on at the center of that board, you might think you're doing great outside on the edge, but when it comes to tallying your score at the end, if you're not focusing on that building the castle in the middle, you're out of the game.
Yeah, for sure. And not only that, there is a little bit of take that element to it, softened a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
After you've moved all your people around during the game, if there are more than 3 workers, it doesn't matter what color they are. If there are more than 3, meeples have to be taken off until there are 3 left. And they get returned to their owner. Now you can take your own off. I don't know why you ever would, but you can, unless whoever gets their meeple taken off gets coins. So if you need coins for the round, then it may be beneficial. But most people take other people's workers off because it's
getting your guy to the center is what matters.
That's what matters, right? So it does soften it a little bit, getting your workers taken off, getting paid for it. But it's like, man, I worked hard to get that guy up there. Yep. What are you doing? No, don't take my guy off. I love that mechanic of it. It's cool. The take that is soft, so it's not too hurtful. A great implementation of the area control.
That's a great game. So my number 2, a Kickstarter that came out earlier this year, and that is Rolling Heights. Rolling Heights is a great game, very approachable, one that has kind of set itself on the shelf lately, but is a phenomenal game. This is a meeple rolling game.
It is awesome.
So it's the 1920s. You're acting as a general contractor in a rapidly growing city. You're needing to build buildings, gain resources, and be able to build more buildings and try to maintain your control in your area that you're building out to score points while on the main map. But the great thing about this game is you're rolling meeples. So you're going to start off with some meeples, and if you ever have over 10 meeples, you have to choose which 10 meeples you're going to roll. And if you roll them, they lay flat, well, they're considered exhausted, and so they're not going to provide you any benefit. If they're on their side or on their head, then they're considered working steady, and they're going to give you some resources or some benefits. If they land on their feet, they're considered hardworking, and so they're going to give you some advanced benefits. everything that you gain, all these benefits that you're going to get are going to allow you to maintain and try to expand your control on that main board. It doesn't really feel like a take that. It kind of talks like you talked about last week. It feels more like a race. Like we're headed for a destination, and if I can just edge you out here, then it's not a jab. It's you weren't fast enough.
Yeah, that's exactly how it feels.
The game goes until one of the color cubes runs out. Cubes, there's 5 colors, I believe, and they represent different things like steel, wood, glass. One of those runs out, then that triggers the end game. You complete that round, do one more round, then whoever has the most points wins. I love this game. Very simple. I was able to teach it to the Bremmers at Hug 'em Meeple Con, and Tammy was a little bit hesitant, kind of like Cheryl. She was a little overwhelmed with the size of the box, but a very approachable game. She loved it at the end, and Dave loved it as well. Rolling Heights. Great game, my number 2.
All right, we are down to our number 1 picks.
Number 1.
This is exciting. My number 1 is a nautical game. Kind of could be a pirate game.
Could be a pirate
if you
game?
want to be a pirate.
You always want to be a pirate.
I'm usually not a pirate in this one, actually.
Oh, really?
No, I'm usually nice. I'm a merchant. But this is Dead Reckoning. It is one of my favorite implementations of area control because it can benefit you when you lose control of an island.
Yeah.
Which I think is cool. Sometimes it's like, no, seriously, come take this over. When you take over an island, you're using influence. Now, this is a card crafter. So this is a John DeClaire game. His best card crafter, in my opinion. You have a deck of crew members, and you're going to be leveling them up in between turns, and you're also going to be sleeving those transparency sleeves into your advancements into your cards as well to improve your crew. Now, one of the things that you can do, and this is typically with your Buccaneer, is place influence markers. If you're at an island, you play a card that allows you to place influence. You're going to take cubes and place those on the locations on that island. Now, each island, it depends on the island on how much influence it takes to gain control of it. You have to have majority. Even if there are no players, there's no influence markers there, you count the empty spaces as a phantom player until you have the majority of those boxes filled, and then you successfully take control. Now, adjacent to where that column is, there's another column, and that's where the permanent influence markers get placed. When you gain influence and gain control of an island, you get to place a permanent influence marker there. Now, that influence marker will stay there for the remainder of the game. It can never be taken away from you, and it counts towards your total influence. So if something needs 3 influence, so if there are five influence slots on an island, I need 3 influence to gain control of it. I place my 3 influence. I now get to place a free permanent influence. In that column, I now have 4 influence. So for someone to come and take that island away, they need to place 2 of their influence in the empty spots, and then they need to place 2 more influence to take away 2 of my influence off of the main area. Because I have 4, that would then give them 4. Once that happens, they now place one of their cubes in the permanent influence location. And this can go back and forth. Each time you take it over, so if I go back and take it over again, I get to place a second permanent influence marker in that column. Now, why is that important? It's important because the way the game ends. There are goals at the top of the board, and one of the goals is to have 6 permanent influence markers. In order to do that, you either have to conquer a ton of islands or be fighting over a couple of islands,
right?
And constantly be switching hands. Now, ultimately, at the end of the game, you want to have control over those, because those islands, every island you control is worth points. And throughout the game, because as you're sailing, if you control an island, you gain some benefits. You get to set your sails to maximum. You can store gold. You can store resources there. You can produce on those islands.
You can build buildings on those islands.
Yes. So having control is incredibly beneficial and important. And there are ways to protect that with those buildings, right? There are ways to protect your
investment,
your investment, right? Your assets. But ultimately, and maybe it's good to just get one island built up that you can produce income on and have all your stuff on and gain that benefit, and then try to be switching over islands and switching control to try to get that one goal. Because as soon as 4 of those goals someone's hit that 4th goal, on all the different goals that are on the top of the board, and there are many of them up there to be had, once that 4th one's taken, that triggers the end of the game. And it is a bit of a race to get all those achievements and to get that 4th achievement, because there's a lot of ways to score points in this game. There are so many aspects of this game that I love. One of the things that kind of turned me off of it, I'm glad I didn't. I've talked about this before. I'm glad I didn't pay the nerd tax on this, but it was the dice tower, right? It was the ship battles where you're dropping your cubes down and those cubes shoot out the side like a broadside
cannon, yeah.
And where they land is how it determines what happens in the ship battle. That's why I bought the game, because I thought it was just so cool. The game turned out to be amazing, but one thing I was worried about was this area control aspect of it. Yet it has turned out to be one of my favorite aspects of it, just because of the fact that it can benefit you when someone takes control of it. Not to mention that the way it works at the end of the game, if I've passed and my turns are over and there are still people that have one turn left, for someone to come over and take any of my influence markers off, it costs them 2 influence for every one that they remove. It doesn't skew heavily into going later in the round, because the player who ends the game doesn't get another turn. I end the game, it's not like, okay, everybody's going to come in and take over everything I have now and I'm going to lose a ton of points. It actually is a lot more difficult. It actually is beneficial to end the game because it's going to be a lot harder to lose your stuff.
Right.
Very well done. John DeClaire did it awesome. He nailed it with this game, in my opinion. The card crafting is awesome. Moving around the board is awesome. Gaining those advancements. Leveling up your cards is one of my favorite things.
It's a great mechanic, yeah.
It really is. There's just a lot going on with it, and it has a lot to offer, and it is meaty. Small little mini campaigns. I believe there are 3 of them out now. I just barely got my latest Kickstarter, so I have the 3rd set of little miniature campaigns that it just adds more content and more fun to the game. Solid game. I love it. It is one of my favorite games, Dead Reckoning.
Just played it just recently, and it was such a great experience. And you talk about those achievements where it feels like it's a race. At first, it doesn't feel like it's a race. Nobody has scored a single achievement, and then as soon as like 2 or 3 of those achievements are scored, all of a sudden it's just whoosh.
Yeah.
All those are scored.
All of a sudden.
Wait, the game's over now? What's up?
Yeah. And it's interesting because you can see some of it, right? Some of them where everything's visible. Like you can see if it's something that is not visible, you have to put a marker on there. Okay, I have, for example, one of the achievements is you have to have a crew member. Is it 4 crew members up to level 4?
Yeah.
Or 3 crew members up to level 4. 4 crew members up to level 4. Now that's something that not everybody's going to see because that's in your deck of cards. But whenever you achieve that each one you achieve, you have to put one of your markers on, or your cubes on there, influence markers, to say, I have one, now I have my second. This is how far along I am on achieving this. Once you achieve it, then you put your little flag token on there. So everything is visible. So you have an idea as to how close everybody is to achieving everything, but you have to be paying attention.
Yeah.
Because the end of the game can totally creep up on you if you're not looking at, okay, yeah, he's really close to getting the ship upgrade achievement completed, and like that's what you went heavy on that last game was getting ship upgrades, right? I don't think the rest of us had a single upgrade.
No, I was the only one that had upgrades. Yeah,
which is what was the first time I'd never upgraded my ship. That was the first time ever that happened. But there's just so much to do and so many ways to score points and win. I love it. It's great.
Yeah, it was a great game the last time I played it. Very much enjoyed it. Excellent. An excellent number 1. Also, just side note, Rolling Heights, also a John DeClaire game.
I did not realize John DeClaire did that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
That's a solid number 2.
It is. Literally. My number 1 is, wait for it, a Star Wars game.
No way.
It is, yes. And this is Star Wars Rebellion. Star Wars Rebellion is a 2-player game. No matter what the box tells you, it is a 2-player game. There is a lot of plastic in this game. This is distributed by Fantasy Flight, so these minis are quality. However, these minis are mini minis, so not quite the detail that you're going to have on some other things, but they still look really great. Star Wars Rebellion is a board game of epic conflict between the Galactic Empire and the Rebellion Alliance. So you're going to experience the Galactic Civil War like never before. And no other Star Wars game, in my opinion, grasps the feel of the movies more than Star Wars Rebellion. This is, you're playing as the Empire. Your Empire's trying to root out the Rebel base and to eliminate the Rebel Alliance. The Rebels are very much outgunned, outnumbered, and they are trying to coordinate their attacks to be effective, yet be elusive to the Empire to maintain their their reserves secret from the Empire. So the game you're going to be playing, you're going to play a couple of phases each round. First, you're going to assign the leaders. When you're starting the game, you have just a handful of leaders. I believe it's 3 leaders, and you start off with 4 basic mission cards. And unlike other mission cards that you're going to gain later, these mission cards are repeatable. And they're the only mission cards that are going to be repeatable. And so you're going to put one of your mission cards down, face down, and then you're going to assign one of your leaders to that mission card. And then the rebels are going to start that out. Then the Empire is going to do the same thing. Then it's going to come back to the rebels and then back to the Empire. At any point, either player can say, I'm passing. And if they pass, they're no longer allowed to assign leaders to missions, but they're going to keep their leaders in reserve. And they will allow these reserved leaders will then allow them to react and hopefully react well to objectives or missions that your opponent is playing or trying to attempt. So after all those have been assigned, you're going to go to your command phase. And the command phase is you're going to reveal a mission. And if so you're going to say, okay, at a mission, at a site, at a planet I control, I'm going to attempt to complete this mission. Now your opponent's going to say, okay, well, I'm going to try to combat that mission. And so they'll move their leader to that mission. And then you will look at whatever that mission requires. It's going to require one of 4 attributes. And those attributes are diplomacy, intel, spec ops, and logistics. And for each of those matching skills, you're going to roll dice. And you and your opponent are going to roll dice. Whoever has the most successes is going to be either, if it was me and I played the mission, if I rolled the most successes, that mission's complete. Yay. Andy, if you rolled the most, then you have thwarted my plans, right? You've disrupted my mission. And so that mission's going to go to my discard pile, unsuccessful. The other thing you can do is you can activate a leader. And so if I want to get troops, I'm trying to muster troops to a location, I will put my leader into a location. Then each adjacent territory or system, planet, can then send units from those planets or from those adjacent systems to the system I'm currently at. And so if you're going to make those movements, you want to be able to, if your ship has hyperdrive, then your ship can fly there, no problem. If your ship does not require hyperdrive, or if your ship does not have hyperdrive, like TIE fighters, then those TIE fighters will have to be absorbed or stored inside a capital ship that can carry those starfighters. And then if you're going to take ground troops, well, those ground troops also need to be picked up. And so you have to have a transport that's going to take those ground troops. Otherwise, you can't move them. All this is going on very much gives you the whole feel. And then at the end of the last phase of the game is the refresh phase. And this is kind of unique, too, that I really enjoy, is you're going to pull back all your mission leaders. And now the Empire actually has the opportunity to try to take prisoner captive. And then they can actually put them in carbonite.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really cool. And so you can mark that, well, you've captured my person and they're frozen in carbonite. So I'm down a leader.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. And so then at the end of the turn, both sides are going to draw 2 more mission cards. Now, these mission cards are the one-time use mission cards. Then the Empire is going to launch probe droids. Now, the system, I can't remember the total count. I think there's like 22 systems that are out there. The probe droids are going to reveal to the Empire 2 systems where the Rebel base is not. Because at the beginning of the game, the Rebel player took all the cards, picked out where they were going to put their Rebel base, put that card to the side, shuffled up the remaining system cards, and returned them to this probe deck. And so at the end of each turn, the Empire is going to identify 2 cards that the Rebel base is not at. And then throughout the game, the Empire is going to have to go to a system. They'll have to take out the space battle. And then once they have the space battle complete, they will go down and battle it out on the planet. Once they've cleared that army out of the planet, then they're going to say, is this your Rebel base? And if it is, then all my secret units that I had stored at my Rebel base show up and we battle it out again. And if the Empire takes out my Rebel base, they win. Otherwise, we're going to go to the next round. Rebel players are going to draw objective cards, and these objective cards are going to allow them things like destroy the Death Star, Rebel plans, and just all these things that are very thematic. All these missions are very thematic to events that have happened in the Star Wars universe. And then you're going to advance the time track. And the time track will allow you to either gain recruits and or build units. And this build units I really love, because you'll evaluate the board. Which systems do I have control over? And as the Empire, I can have either subjugated planets or I can have loyal planets. If I have a subjugated planet, it's going to give me some resources. But if it's loyal, then it's going to give me more resources. And then the Rebel Alliance, all their planets, they have their loyal planets. And you have 3 sections on the side of your board. You're going to add units to all these sections, and then you're going to shift all of the level 1 assignment, all the level 1 units. They're going to slide off the board, and they come into the active pool, which you will deploy. All level 2 units will go down to level 1. Level 3 will go down to level 2. It's a great timed mechanic. Yeah. The Empire has the ability to build a second Death Star, and that Death Star will have to come out and then again go through that whole deployment as well. A great game that is just steeped into that Star Wars theme. I love this game. Very highly rated. It is kind of a longer game, but so good. And very much a 2-player game. You're going to head, and that Star Wars Rebellion.
2-player game unless you want the other players to hold the controller without batteries.
Absolutely. Yes. It is a 2-player game, no matter what the box says.
It sounds awesome. It's one I need to play.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I've played this.
If I had time to prep and I knew it was just going to be Greg and I, last week would have been an ideal time to get that as a 2-player game to the table. And if there's ever a time that it's, hey, when we're done here, let's go ahead and bust it out, Andy.
How long does it take?
Maybe 3 hours.
It's kind of late, Nathan.
Yeah. But it's a great game, Star Wars Rebellion.
Awesome. Well, I think that we've talked about some pretty sweet games. Games worthy of being on 2 top 5 lists.
Absolutely.
Sure. All right. Some I'm anxious to play that were on yours that I have not yet played.
Yeah, and on yours too.
Well, these are our top 5 lists. If there are something that didn't make your list that you
our list, or
if there's something that didn't make our list that would make your top 5 list, we would love to hear about it. Shoot us an email at meeplenation@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
With only the 2 of us, we still went pretty long.
Yeah,
Good thing Doug wasn't here.
We were long-winded. All right, until next time.
We'll see you at the game table.
Thank you for listening and being a part of Meeple Nation. If you would be so kind as to follow, subscribe, share, and rate or review this podcast, it really helps to spread the fun. You can be more involved in supporting the podcast by joining the nation at patreon.com/MeepleNation, or you can find a link at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. And while you're there, look at all our extra content. There are links to all our past episodes, a wide variety of blogs, pictures from our Instagram feed, and bios for all the hosts and our awesome bloggers. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all under Meeple Nation. If you would like to chat with the hosts or other members of the nation, you can join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. We hope to see you again at a game night, a con, or maybe a suspense-driven evening of Werewolf. Thank you for listening and supporting Meeple Nation, and stay tuned for next week's episode.
Thank you so much for listening. We very much want to thank our patrons who help keep the podcast running. I personally want to thank my co-hosts for all the help they provide with both content here on the podcast, in addition to what we have available on our website. Without them, the podcast would not happen. If you too would like to support the podcast, you can join the nation at patreon.com/Meeple_Nation. Or you can find a link to Patreon at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. If you have any questions, comments, or games you feel should be on our radar, you can always reach us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We can't wait to hear from you. I am grateful to Doug and Andy who helped me edit episodes, and I want to thank James and Kim Clark who do the editing on our blogs and on our webpage, which can be found at meeplenation.com. We want to thank Brain Detergent for our music. If you want to find more from him, you can follow his links that can be found on our webpage, or simply search for Brain Detergent on YouTube to find more of his tracks. Thank you again for listening and being part of the Meeple Nation community.